afternoon guys, welcome back to another video. So I was going to start this video when I got to the yard with Nancy, but I actually decided to do it here today, mainly so that I can actually talk to you a little bit more one-to-one without the distractions of the yard. And we all know I'm not the most confident when I'm up there with chatting, so I thought it was better to do it here so I can really get to know you and you can get to know me. But today is going to be talking about why I bought a Thoroughbred. What made me want one? What made me be crazy enough to buy well, she was 4 at the time when I got her. Luna's behind the camera, so she's going to move it for me, which is joyful. The realities of life. But Nancy was 4 years old when I got her. I got her straight off the racetrack. She had done her last race 2 weeks before I got her. I'm nuts. And I chose a chestnut mare out of all of the ones that I could have chose. So I will save the process of how I bought Nancy, how I found her. Luna's coming to join us. Say hi. How I bought her and all that sort of things, and actually sourcing a racehorse for another video because that's quite lengthy. I want to keep this to the reason why I chose to buy a racehorse. So the reason I decided to buy a Thoroughbred, to buy an ex-racehorse straight off the track, as I say, there's a few different options. You don't have to get them straight off the track, but I decided to so that I had the most chance of knowing where they'd come from, what they'd done previously and the most about them. And I also wanted to do the whole journey right from the start, crazy as I am, all by myself. So I decided to get one right off the racetrack. And the reason I've always wanted a Thoroughbred, my last pony, she was a New Forest. She was nothing to do with Thoroughbred at all. I've always liked the Thoroughbred type. Luna, mind out the way. I've always liked the Thoroughbred type. I do prefer the sportier, finer breeds compared to the heavier horses, just personal preference. And because I'm quite short as well, I'm only 5'1", if you didn't know, I haven't got the longest legs in the world. So although I like a bigger horse, I don't necessarily need the larger body type because I can't get my legs around them in the simplest form. So a Thoroughbred has always been a horse that I've been naturally drawn to, and obviously they start racing most of the time very young. They have a career in racing for however long that may be, or short. Some of them don't even make it to the racetrack. They go into training and they never make it out of the training side of things. Nancy did race, but again, that's another story. And yeah, some of them, they just don't suit racing for whatever reason. Some of them physically aren't suitable to then go on to another career, while some of them are. So if they, lucky enough, are able to go on to another career, it's something that's always sort of I've been drawn to, and I've really wanted to have a go at producing an ex-racehorse, to really make them my own and to give them that second chance in life. We all know that racehorses have got this sort of stigma around them, a bit of a bad reputation in some cases. They're known to be quite unmanageable, unhandleable, not the safest, prone to breaking. I'm using quotes quite a lot because it's sort of a generalised theme or facts that people seem to think about, or when they think of a Thoroughbred, a lot of people are put off of them. A lot of yards won't accept Thoroughbreds, and I personally have found that when I was initially looking for yards for Nancy, especially because at the time of buying Nancy, I didn't know what horse I was going to be getting. I didn't know anything about them other than the fact they were going to be a Thoroughbred, and a lot of yards didn't like that. As soon as I said Thoroughbred straight off the track, they was like, no thank you. And I can see why to a certain degree. They don't always fit straight into normal horse life, again using the quotes. Some of them take a lot more care and understanding than others. Some of them quite happily will just plod on into a new life and get on with it. But 9 times out of 10, they're going to need quite a bit of care. And I think that's where they're misunderstood. A lot of people don't factor that in. They just see quite often a cheap horse. There's no requirements as such. The racing yards, primarily if you're getting them straight off the track, if you're going down the sort of rehoming from a specific training and rehoming place, there's a lot more procedures in place. But again, we'll talk about that in another video when I look at how to buy a racehorse. But if you're getting them straight off the track, a lot of the owners or trainers aren't really too bothered about where they're going. They're not suitable for racing, so they would like them gone as soon as possible in the nicest way. If they're not making the money, if they're not suitable for racing, there's no point them wasting time and money by being on the race yard. A lot of the race yards are a sort of smaller facility. They don't necessarily always have fields or turnout or the facilities to be able to keep a horse if it's not in training. It's not the right environment for that. So some of them have contacts where they will send the horses. Some of them have got fields off site where they'll send the horses. Some of them just need them horses to go to whoever's willing to take them. A lot of the horses are very cheap. And as I say, they're quite easy to get hold of, so a lot of the time, sadly, they end up in the wrong hands. Not always through the fault of the person buying them, but I think it's primarily a lack of knowledge or understanding what these horses actually need. So as a generalised term, some of them go into the wrong hands for whatever reason, as I say, and then they become unmanageable. They are not a normal horse when they come straight off the track. They've had a very, very different upbringing and a very different life to your average horse. They're often very hot, very fit. They've been in work 6 days a week since they were 1.5 years, 2 years old. And yeah, it's a very, very different life for them. So to come into a completely different environment, often a lot busier in the terms of there's people coming and going all day, horses in and out. On the race yard, it is very, very routine and strict. So yeah, it's just a huge change for them in many ways. And a lot of them can't deal with that. Some of the horses will just need to be turned away for a few months, possibly even longer, to sort of just wind down, settle, and sort of relax from racing, let their bodies naturally go back to a more horse state rather than a fitness athlete, because at the end of the day, that's what they are. They're athletes. They have a job to do and their bodies have adapted to do that. Some of them can't cope with that wind down time of not having a routine. Nancy was one of them. I tried to turn her away. I tried to give her that downtime. She couldn't cope with it. She needed that routine. And because of that misunderstanding, that reputation they've got, I personally always wanted one. To prove a point to myself that I was knowledgeable enough, and what a journey it would be to be able to do that and retrain one right from scratch. What rewarding process it would be. And also to give one that second chance, that life away from racing. As I say, a lot of them end up in the wrong hands. They'll then be sold on because they can't be managed. A lot of them then end up in the hands of dealers. They get passed around, and sadly they don't always have the best life out of racing that you would expect them to have, and that they deserve, really. They're just a misunderstood horse at the end of the day, and some of them aren't suitable to become riding horses. As sad as that is, some of them might not ever become into a mental state or physical state where they're able to be sound enough to become a normal riding horse. And in some of them cases, it is kinder for them to be put to sleep. And I know that will be hugely controversial, but it's something I sort of stand by, because it's not safe for the animal or anyone working around that animal to be in that situation. And if there's no way to make that horse mentally or physically sound enough to become a normal riding horse, or it hasn't got the option to just be turned out into a field and left there, or if it can't even cope with that, then in the nicest way, there is not the right options for that horse to be alive, to continue. If it can't race and it can't be a sound, normal horse, it can't be here. It hasn't got a place. It's dangerous for the horse and the people. So I do stand by that. Obviously, there would be rigorous sort of testing around, as many options as you could possibly do to try and help that horse, the right hands, the right people, but it's not always the option, it's not always the case, and not all of them can be fixed, not all of them can adapt, as sad as that is. So I really wanted to personally give one of them a chance. I can't help them all, I can't save them all. I would love one day maybe to set up a business of sourcing the racehorses, starting them, finding them good homes and being able to place them with the right people. That would be a fantastic dream to be able to do that and help that. But for right now, my personal circumstances and my ability, I don't feel ready to be able to do that. So for me, that one horse, finding that right one that I clicked with, that was going to be my little partner, my partner in crime, as I always call Nancy, finding that one horse and giving that horse the chance that it deserves at a second life was so important to me. It's something I've always wanted to do. It's quite funny, I remember before I got my last pony Star, when I was at a riding school when I was young, there was this horse there, a chestnut, big dressage horse, very fancy. It was actually a gelding, but it had 4 white socks, the white blaze on its face, this beautiful prestigious chestnut horse, and I just thought, wow, how impressive is that horse. So obviously my last pony was grey, so it's quite funny when I went to see Nancy, that she was chestnut. She actually had 3 white socks, so I did say on my requirements, she's missing a sock, we'll have to paint that one, because I'm a bit OCD as well, if you didn't know. I like things symmetrical, so that one missing sock, I was like, but it wasn't a deal breaker. She had my heart from the minute I saw her. I saw a few different horses. I went to a very well-known, I'm not going to say the name on here, place that sources racehorses mainly from Ireland, and sells them for considerable amount of money considering they haven't done anything. And I nearly ended up buying a broken horse, but I'll put that in the other video I'm going to make of how to buy a racehorse. And that's when I decided to go down the route as well of sourcing one directly from the track. So I saw quite a few. They're not all in the same condition, but yeah, it's really important to find that one that you click with. As sad as the situation is and you almost want to take them all and help them all, we can't all do that, and it's not right to do that. You can't help them all at once, so helping one in the right way is much more beneficial than trying to help them all. Obviously, if we could, I'm sure most of us would. I know I definitely would, but Nancy was that one. She was the one that I found. So I would like to do some ROR classes with her. We'll go into more of Nancy's journey at a different point and how I've actually retrained her and the process that I've taken. It's taken a long time. We're now 3 years on, nearly to the day that I bought her. They're all different, they all grow at different rates, and again, that's why they're misunderstood. A lot of people see these flashy horses going for cheap and expect to be clear rounds and jump in and dressage and God knows what on them the next week, and it's just not going to happen. No matter where you get them from, you would have to have an absolute 1 in a million, an absolute rarity. It's almost the impossible to be able to do that. They just can't cope with it and they're not ready for it. And even if you bought a horse that was fully developed and ready and had been out competing for the last 3 years, I still wouldn't have it out the next week, in my personal opinion. So racehorses, they're misunderstood through no fault of their own. As I say, there are the dangerous ones, there are the ones that can't be helped, sadly, but the ones that can, they just need a bit of time. And also you've got to factor in the fact that they come with nothing. When I say nothing, I bought Nancy home, well, they delivered Nancy to me. She didn't have a head collar. She literally had the skin that she was in.
Hey Siri,
Siri's talking to me now. She came with nothing. So you've got to factor in the cost of everything you need to buy. Not only the training they're going to need, the help they're going to need, any sort of medical, or you're going to need all the checks done as you would probably with any other horse as well, but even more so, as well as factoring in the time that you're not going to be able to necessarily work that horse or ride that horse or do anything with it. You're still paying for it. You've still got to look after it. You've still got to feed it. You've still got to have the dentist, the back person, their feet done, and everything takes so much longer. They're not used to necessarily having a farrier come out and be hot shod. A lot of them are in their stables and they're cold shod with just, now straight on. They don't have the smoke or the steam or the heat. They're not used to that, so everything takes so much longer for them to understand and adapt, and also it's a lot more money. They need a lot of training, a lot of care. You know, you might find that a lot of the racehorses that come off have potentially got ulcers or need some treatment to help with their stomachs, because of the different life they have. Not a lot of turnout, they're often given quite a high grain feed, so a lot of them do have ulcers or have had ulcers. Some of them might have back problems. You know, they're started at such a young age, they need that little bit of extra TLC, and then 9 times out of 10 not very good doers. You're going to need to feed it a lot more than what you need to feed your chunky little cob that's in the stable next door. So you've got to factor all of that into account when you're buying that free or very cheap horse. It's probably going to cost you more than if you was to buy that little cob next door for £3,000 with all of its tack and ready to go. You're probably going to spend a lot more than that in the first year by getting this horse up and running and ready to go. And some of them sadly don't make it, not because they're mentally not able to, but their bodies have been through a lot from such a young age. You know, they are quite fragile, they're quite fine horses, and again, they need a lot of care to be able to help them in the best way you possibly can. You can't necessarily always just chuck them out in a field naked and that's it, happy days, get on with it, I'll see you tomorrow. They might need extra boots and extra rugs. They might not be able to stay out for as long. Some of them can, you know. As with every horse, each to their own. They are so different, and the one that I have might be completely different to the one you have or the others I saw. And they change so much as well, you know. What you can't do with it in the first year, 2 years down the line you might be doing with no problem. Nancy couldn't stay out 24/7 when I first got her. It's taken 2.5 years for me to be able to do that with her. The summer just gone, she was living out 24/7. She'd come in, I'd be able to ride her, she'd have one feed a day, and then she'd go back out, and she was quite happy with that. But that would have never been an option when I first got her, because she just mentally couldn't cope with it. So everything takes time, and you have to adjust your expectations to the individual horse that you've got. You might have plans, and you're going to have a sort of a set plan of what you want to do with the horse and how you're going to manage that horse, but you need to be prepared to adapt that to the individual horse you've got and how they're adapting to their new life. But overall, that's essentially my reason why. Primarily because I wanted to give one a second chance for this misunderstood breed. And I think how rewarding it's going to be knowing you've been able to not only give them a second chance at life, a second chance at a new career, starting from scratch. Not only are you starting a young horse that doesn't necessarily know anything about the traditional way of riding, you've got to undo those habits they've learned in the racing industry and redo them completely with new. They're not like a young horse, they're not like any other breed where you're just picking out of the field and you're starting a young horse from scratch. They're often trickier because they've got all these habits and different ways. You've got to undo that to be able to redo the new habits, teach them what you want them to know, which is very different to what they were previously taught. I could go into it and I could talk for hours about it, honestly, and as I say, they're all so different, so my opinions might be completely different to the person over there that's got one as well. So this is completely just my experience, my personal thoughts, my way of doing things and how I feel about it. As I say, everyone and every horse is completely different. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know everything. This is the first racehorse I've done. I've worked with some racehorses in the past, but this is the first one I've done from scratch. So I'm not going to pretend I know everything. I wouldn't say that I'm hugely experienced. I've been around horses for the majority of my life and I've worked on plenty of different yards that's given me loads of experience. But I don't know everything. I'm still learning and I try and absorb as much information as possible. So if you've got different experience or different thoughts on things, I'd love to hear it, because as I say, I'm always open to learning. This is just what I've picked up along the way, what I've found has worked, and that is what my channel is about. It's not a how-to and you should do this and you should do that, this is what you need to do. This is my experience, my way of doing things, my learning, and things will change, you know. As with the horses, as said about Nancy earlier, I've changed over the years. The things that I thought I was going to be doing are different to what I'm actually doing now. I've had to adapt and learn new things as well, so I think that's all part of the process. It's all learning, and yeah, I would ideally love to event Nancy. That's what I've potentially bought her for, but if we don't get there, we don't get there. I just want a horse that I can give that new life, love, hopefully know that she's happy and enjoying her life, and we can just have fun, whether that be hacking around the local field or going to one-day events, or maybe even 3-day events. You never know what the future holds, but we're just taking it slow. As I say, we're almost 3 years into our journey now, and I'll do a recap of where we've been, what we've done. But I hope you have enjoyed hearing about my plans with Nancy, why I ended up buying a Thoroughbred, and the sort of misconceptions and reasons as to why I got one. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Do like my video and subscribe to my channel, it would really help me out. I enjoy producing this content, even though I'm not necessarily very good at it. I hope to learn. Again, always learning, but no, I really enjoy doing this, and it's something I'm sort of really passionate about and want to share with you along the way. So yeah, keep following my journey. If you've got any questions or any tips for me, pop them in the comments below, and I shall catch up with you on the next one. Let me know what you want to see, and I'd love to do one about how to actually buy a racehorse and how I found Nancy too. So I shall see you in the next one, guys. Lovely chatting to you, and I'll see you all soon. Bye. Bye, Luna.